Ladies and gentlemen, Psalms 73 says, "Truly God is good to Israel, even to such as are of a clean heart." And I don't know about you, but I can't just have a clean heart just like that. I need goodness to fill me. And so I just believe that if you don't know God, ask Him. If you don't know Jesus, just ask Him. It's really that simple. And I believe that's the way how you get a clean heart. Goodness is inherent in all human beings, but there's also evil. And if you want to just be purely good and do things out of a purely good motive, you got to have good in you. Through and through. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about Justice League, but we're going to look at it in relationship to Man of Steel. But first, in front of you, we see the Trinity members here, right? You know what's so cool about this? All of this that you're seeing is unfiltered behind the scenes footage of these members of the Trinity. And the thing about it is, when I look at them, I see Batman, I see Superman, and I see Wonder Woman, even though I know these guys are in off the set prop suits. You know what I'm saying? I just don't see the actors. I see the characters. I don't know why it is. It's very palpable and very powerful. And if you get the Justice League DVD or digital copy, the bonus features, that is if you get the one with the bonus features, the bonus features has the Heart of Justice. You should check out that. And you would see these guys actually moving in motion. And Ben Affleck looks incredible moving as Batman. It's just crazy, man. That rooftop scene, he looks like Batman, man. Dude looks like, and he still looks like that BVS Batman. The thing about it is, I think how they did the cinematography and the lighting, we didn't quite get that appearance of him, but he's so ominous when he moves around. Ben Affleck just really gives me the creeps watching him move. I mean, he's that intimidating. Anyway, that's besides the point. I just show you. I sort of fused the Batman piece, the Superman piece, and the Wonder Woman piece together. And you know what's interesting too? I know it's but green screen. I like that there's a green screen behind Superman, a green screen behind Wonder Woman, no green screen behind Batman. In other words, he's human. He's grounded. There is no special effects. You know what I mean? I don't know if you guys picked that up, but to me, that's just, that's interesting. These two have a lot in common, which is why when Superman says she's with you in BVS, Batman's like, I thought she's with you. It makes sense to me. I don't know about you guys. All right, let's get into the comparisons between Man of Steel and BVS that I want to discuss. So the first thing was that I realized the technology of Man of Steel in terms of the weapons that were used to fire, particularly their Kryptonian weapons, and the weapons from Apocalypse, particularly the weapons that the Parademons used, had a very similar principle that governed them. They were both weapons that harnessed plasma energy and focused that energy and shot it out as a sort of beam or ray. Now, plasma energy used to shoot in guns is not a new concept. This is something that you've seen in many a sci-fi movie. Maybe not in Star Wars, because Star Wars, I think they shoot light. But in a lot of sci-fi movies, we've seen the use of plasma energy, and it's harnessed and then shot out. In the case of the Kryptonians, they shot out a blue kind of plasma energy. That is a plasma energy that also emits a light frequency that is in the blue spectrum. Whereas when we looked at the Parademon weaponry, they shot out a plasma energy that emitted a red light, or a light of red frequency of light. So that's very interesting to me, and I thought I would just speak about these parallels. Again, plasma guns are not unique, but it is something we see in sci-fi. You probably won't be seeing that as much in superhero movies. Zack Snyder introducing the sci-fi element sort of like to, again, these movies. And that's why I'm interested in Krypton, because Krypton that's going to be on the Sci-Fi channel is going to have more of a sci-fi approach to the Superman story, and I think I'm more into the sci-fi aspect of comic book movies than, you know, the sort of magical comic book movie approach. And particularly what Marvel uses is more of a comic book magical approach to things. There is explanation to them, but usually it's to kind of trick you into following, and the explanation is not comprehensive like Warner Brothers and the DCEU, quite frankly. And a lot of the explanations that you get in the DCEU, there actually are, how do I put this, plausible, and not only plausible, but these are not just theories. Some of these things are really actually real, and that's what's crazy about it. You know, I'll give you an example. When Aquaman said to Batman, the water does the talking, that is absolutely true. Water transmits the information about objects, about things. So for instance, if Steppenwolf was in a location where somehow water was around him, and that water could move downstream, they could actually pinpoint Steppenwolf's location based on the what we call the echo frequency, as well as the chemical particulate nature of Steppenwolf. For instance, sharks can pick up, we will say the scent for now, the scent of something 10, 20, 30 miles away. Okay? Seals, the same thing. What's the animal that kills sharks? Killer whales. Orcas. Hundreds of miles away they can pick up something. So that's why they said the water, because the water would transmit this stuff and then the animals would pick it up. So that's why Aquaman didn't say he could talk to fish. It's the water. When he's in the water, whatever feeling or emotion or whatever he emits into the water, the animals pick it up and then they're able to be informed as to how to act and behave. So I think that's a very sci-fi-ish explanation, which is actually feasible and makes sense and is actually something in science we're discovering. Whereas they'd probably, if it was Marvel, they would just probably have Aquaman talk to fish. You know, and you would see the beam thing, boop, 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 you know what I'm saying? It's just what it is. It is what it is, folks. So that's what I like about the DCEU. Let me keep on moving forward here. Here's another parallel between Man of Steel and Justice League. And I did this on Facebook, and there's a guy, he's trying to debate me, which he's losing the debate, obviously. He's trying to say this is something generic I'm doing and it doesn't make sense. But I'm going to go and unpack it with you guys, because maybe it's how I package it. I don't know. But basically, let me zoom this up a little bit so I can explain it, because I'm going to spend some time on this one. Now, to be honest with you, I thought I had better resolution than this, but the resolution is not that great. So anyway, common people of the DCU world are saved in both Man of Steel and Justice League. Yeah, okay. Common people in the DCU world were saved in BVS, but that was not my point, okay? And this is a comparison between Man of Steel and Justice League. And in Man of Steel, we had some main people in Metropolis who we were following. I don't know if you can even see this. It's so unclear, which is sad, because I thought I'd rendered it properly, but apparently I didn't. And then we had the two heroes here, which was Superman and Lois Lane. And they're all in the same vicinity. I guess you'll see that in just a minute. And then we had these principals here, which were the people. They kind of were the representation of the people of the world who were being saved. Jenny Perry White and Steve Lombard. And then we had the other people of Metropolis, who are all in this one picture. So what I like about this picture is it shows the scope of the people who were saved. It shows the people of the world and the people we were following. It's like a case study, sort of like, so you can get invested in the people of the world. And it showed the heroes all in one, pretty much one shot, which I thought was really interesting. And so it says, two heroes, Superman and Lois, are seen in the presence of the people in Metropolis who were saved by them, which I think is very cool. Now, in Justice League, we actually had the same parallel. And that's what is so cool about it. We actually had a Russian family that we were following. Yuri was one of the people of the family. And then you had the little girl, of course. She was kind of like the center of attention. And this Russian family was saved by the Flash, as you can see here. And we were following them. And then in a separate viewing, which had to do with the Flash turning and looking, we see that Superman also saved other Russians in a building. And those little rectangular blocks just show the Russians inside that building who were saved by Superman, who you can see down below. Again, we had two heroes here, Superman and the Flash, who were seen with the Russian families, and they saved them, okay? So both Justice League and Man of Steel have a similar pattern with heroes saving people of the DCEU. And the interesting thing about both of these is, it's, a lot of people are saying, well, that's like a generic film. No, this is not. The people of the DCEU world are actually characters in that world. That's the interesting thing. We have additional characters. So we have the heroes, we have the villains, and then we also have the people of the world, which is a separate character. And in both Man of Steel and Justice League, we have this symmetry, or this parallel, where we actually are following the people of the world in a specific case study with particular characters. We're following them for an extensive point of the film to see how they are dealing with the disaster or the crisis that faces them. Okay? And that's what I find parallel here. And, well, the Russian family was they were within the first third of the movie. From the first third of the movie to the very end of the movie, we were constantly watching at the Russian family, and then going away. In Man of Steel, it was in the last segment of the film, in the last third of the film, we started following Perry White, Jenny, and Steve Lombard. Now, there's a guy who is a subscriber to my channel. His name is William Maribel. I'm calling him by name. Who he was the guy that was trying to debate me on this, that it's generic. And he was saying how, Man of Steel characters were well flushed out, whereas the Russian family characters were not as well flushed out. And I disagree with him, and it's very simple. The setting in Man of Steel is we're in Metropolis. The setting in Justice League is we're in this abandoned wilderness, this place where nobody's supposed to be living, but some people are outcasts and they're living there. It's an abandoned area. So they're two completely different opposites. We have the outcasts in Justice League, and we have the inclusive people in a society integrated in a densely populated city. It's just two different stories. So to tell me that the Russian family wasn't properly characterized is to tell me, therefore, that for some reason the people of Metropolis, of the Daily Planet, were well characterized because they were in a densely populated city, and there was one very prominent person there, Perry White, which is among them. That makes no sense. Characterization must fit in. If you tell me the Russian family needed to be more characterized like how it was with Perry White, Jenny, and Steve Lombard for the Daily Planet, then you're telling me that they're not outcasts. So therefore, they must be well characterized. They must be well named. But the whole purpose behind them being outcast is so that they can be somewhat nameless. We're not hearing everybody's name. If you're an outcast, if you're somebody least understood, it's going to be hard to get information on you. So we hear one person's name in that whole entire family, which is Yuri. Very interesting. We don't hear anybody else's name, but yet the little girl is a key character in this movie. And we see almost everything through her eyes. Even though we're looking at the rest of the family, she's actually the most well-formed character. Yuri is not, but his name is mentioned, and if you go and you watch the context of that, I don't want to give everything away, we would find out why Yuri is important and why his name was called. Again, I don't know how many thoughtful people actually watch movies. And if you know anything about Zack Snyder, he's a visual director. So therefore, that's one of his hallmarks. He's much more than that. And so the fact that we focus on them and visually we're getting a lot of information. The fact that they speak a foreign language is also beautiful because they speak a foreign language, they feel foreign to us, and yet they show and they make us feel fear. We're seized with fear at what is happening. We're panicking. I mean, when the parademon slapped on that glass window, I panicked. Okay, I still wonder why the parademons didn't come inside the building and attack them, because they obviously feed off of fear, and obviously they were curious and they were all around the building, but clearly they were not aware that there were occupants inside of it. Otherwise they would crash inside of it and attack the occupants. We follow this family for a good portion of this movie. And the point behind following this family is because the family is a character in this movie. And we're following the family because we need to know what's happening with these people of Earth who are under threat. Same thing with Man of Steel. All right? It just happened to be the latter third We saw the scope of damage, just like how we see the scope of damage with the Russian family. After we expand outwards, we see the thing terraforming the earth, and then we see all these people running away, and they're running into their truck to get away. Okay? Now, there are a lot of parallels between Jenny, Perry White, Steve Lambert, and this Russian family. The first parallel we realize is they try to stay put, both of them. Perry White was trying to keep everybody calm in the Daily Planet, and the Russian family, the father doesn't want them to speed off and try and run away because he thinks they would be attacked. So they're trying to just stay put. Then they realize that does not make sense, and they run. Okay, the Russian family runs because the terraforming thing is coming at them, and the little girl says, "Papa," and the father's like, "Let's get the heck out of here." And they get out, and they're heading towards their truck to go on. Remember, they're nomads, they're outcasts. You look at their makeshift home, it tells you everything. All right, so they're going into their makeshift little truck, and they're gone, right? And you can see the trucks patched together. Lots of character in the objects, by the way. Perry White and company see a plane crash into another plane. The whirlwind is smashing up everything, and they get the heck out of Dodge. They're like, "We're leaving," says Perry White, and everybody's gone. All right, buildings coming crashing down. Perry White and they get out of there and run for their lives. The rises of 9/11, very visceral, and eventually the building comes crashing down on Jenny's pinned underneath it. They can't go further. Russian family, the truck runs out of gas. They can't go further. Very similar parallels. And then, of course, the heroes intervene. Superman stops the world engine. The Flash comes and pushes them away. Right? And here's the other parallel that's very interesting to me. Perry White tells Jenny, "We're not leaving you. We're not going anywhere." And you can tell the hopefulness of Perry White's character, where Perry White holds Jenny's hands very firmly. And it reminds me of the parallel with the Russian family. It's at a slightly different time. It's a little bit earlier, where the father's like, "Someone will come and save us." And you can see he's the guy with the gun. Perry White's like the father figure in Man of Steel. And the father in the Russian family is like the father figure. He's the guy that has the last say and decides what's happening. So the parallels are just incredible. The difference is we're looking at the parallels of outcasts, nameless, faceless people. And Zach purposefully, and Chris Terrio purposefully didn't have a big mention of their names and stuff because they're not well known. Perry White's well known. He's the head of the Daily Planet. These people are unknown, but yet they're human, and we see they're human. We feel their fear. We feel the tension of them trying to get the heck out of there, right? Because they're survivors. And why that appeals to Justice League is because Justice League is about the outcasts. It is about the person who does not fit in. Aquaman's the guy that's talking about them not being able to fit in anywhere. But guess what? Most of these characters, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, the Flash, they don't really fit in everywhere, right? They're kind of like outcasts. They're kind of loners. So it's reflective of the movie, these characters, and it fits perfectly. The characterization fits perfectly to what the story is telling. Man of Steel was a little bit different. It was about identity. And so Superman's beginning to find himself, and he has to declare himself to the world as a beacon. And so we need characters that can match up to that. A well-known character like Perry White, who has already declared himself to the world as who he is. Jenny and Steve Lombard. Jenny, we learn more about her as we see her in Crisis. Steve Lombard, we learn a little bit more about him in Crisis. We've seen these guys not before. And so it's very important to understand the context in the story being told before you can open your mouth and ignorantly say, "Oh, well, this wasn't properly characterized." You don't know the story. Think about the themes the story is giving. About the outcast. About the faceless person. About the person not noticed. The person underestimated. The person who is reviled for having their gifts. The person who hates themselves. The person who's a survivor. You have to understand the context of what you're watching. Man of Steel wasn't about the survivor. It was about a man putting an ideal before the world, standing before them, having them run behind him. That's Man of Steel. And it's called Man of Steel, not Superman, because he's becoming Superman. He's not Superman until the very end of the movie. He's beginning to become that Superman you know. So that's why it was called Man of Steel. So we're not going to have a Man of Steel 2, folks. Why? The next movie will be about Superman. As Batman v Superman was, we're going to have a Superman movie, the next movie. It's just common sense. It's called Man of Steel for a reason. Superman was the sequel to Man of Steel, which was Batman v Superman, which was the sequel to Man of Steel. So the next Superman film will be a film with the fully fledged Superman you saw at the end of Justice League. It will not be called Man of Steel 2 because Man of Steel was about a Superman becoming. So why would you call it Man of Steel 2? Batman v Superman was Man of Steel 2. A lot of y'all don't want to respect that and don't want to believe it, but that's the facts. Now let's talk a little bit more about... I have two questions for you. The first one is, two heroes are seen in the presence of the people of the world we were looking at, whether the world was Bajornov in Russia or whether the world was Metropolis. There were two heroes there. Why did Zack Snyder pick two heroes to help these people? My second question is just as relevant as the first. Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice never had the kind of parallels that we saw in Man of Steel and in with Man of Steel and Justice League. It didn't share those parallels. This was one of them, and there were some other parallels we've shown. And why is that so? Now that's related to why there are two heroes, even though why there are two heroes is a little bit more specific. Why? So I leave these two questions with you guys. And leave your comments in the comment section below. Feel free to talk as much as you want about this because I like discussion. And we don't just discuss in a vacuum because we want to be better people. We want to strive to do things better. So that's why. If you haven't picked up a copy of Justice League, whether it's a DVD, Blu-ray, or digital copy, I suggest you do. It's a deeper movie than you think. Let's go on to the final one that I have. The final parallel really speaks volumes. There's so much I want to say about this, but we'll just try and take our time and go through it. And it has to do with the symmetry of Martha Kent, the mother of Clark Kent. And I call her the mother. While Laura Van, not Laura L, but Laura Van, was the mother of Kal-El, and Jor-El was his father, but Laura Van, she never really got to be a mother. All right, she was basically the birth mother. All right, she did pick the world, and she did want to see him do well, and she had her doubts. But at the end of the day, Laura Van was the birth mother of Kal, but she was not the mother of Kal. Kal's mother, Kal was culturized and raised on Earth by Martha Kent. Martha Kent was Kal's mother. And what's beautiful about this, if you look at this particular shot and scene, is it's not symmetrical per se, it's a repetition. But even so, it has a meaning that is interesting. So, if you cast your bread upon the waters, you will find it after many days. If you do good, good will come back to you. The first scene in Man of Steel where Martha and Clark are together, the very first scene where we see Martha and Clark together in Justice League, in Man of Steel, is where Martha ends up affirming her son, meaning she encourages Clark. Clark says, "What's wrong with me, Mom?" And she says, "Oh, Clark." And she looks at him as if he's so gifted and so wonderful. He does not know his potential yet. And so she affirms him. She comforts him. She consoles him. She encourages him to keep on moving on. And that affirmation pays off when Clark comes back. And on his return from the dead, he's confident. He is the epitome of what Martha saw his potential to be. And here, he is affirming her. He's consoling her. He is the one encouraging her. He's the one showing her that you can always be hopeful. And that her hopes and dreams, and she had experienced her greatest fear, which was to lose him. which we heard expressed in Man of Steel. And now, aside from losing him, the hope of him becoming what she saw him to be, he has become. And now he's there to confirm and affirm to her. When she said, "Is it really you?" He was like, "Yes, it's really me, Ma." And it's amazing because he's now the one comforting her. However, she has the same gesture where she's holding his face. And I noticed that parents, it's almost a loving expression when they hold their children's face. And it's almost like she's got that little boy again. And this time she's not seeing the potential. She's no longer seeing the potential. It is there. Everything that she saw of him and some is now before her. And remember, she's raised this child. So this is an extremely emotional moment for her. And you can see the difference in expression. The first one, you can see that she's conveying, "My son, I wish you could see the potential of what you are." And the second one is almost an incredulous look. She cannot believe it. And she cannot believe she's beholding the very thing that she had been affirming in her son so many, many years ago. So I found this to be a nice complete circle again. Of course, Zack Snyder's work again, Zack Snyder's story. And I remember listening to Charles Roven speak about the beauty and continuity and the development of a character over a number of movies, and just seeing the progress of that character throughout these different movies. And again, Justice League shows you all of that. And again, it's all just credence to Zack's storytelling ability, because he wrote the story, even though Chris Terrio did the screenplay, and then Joss Whedon filled in some spots. But at the end of the day, it's just beautiful storytelling. I can't wait to really go into Zack's director's cut whenever that comes out, and really just get more stuff on top of what we have. But I just want to say, it's an honor to have experienced these movies, because it has such a changing effect on me. And you know, sometimes I engage with petty people and people who have their biases. You know, they're very partisan people out here. There are people who feel Joss Whedon couldn't do anything well, and it's just this partisanship. And then there are those people who are just bashing this movie, and they're like pro Zack Snyder, and that's it. You know, Zack Snyder's the only one who can do this and do that. And I'm really tired of that bullshit and the politics that's going on. I'm tired of that. I'm not one of those people. I like to look at movies for the inherent value. Whether you believe Joss Whedon directed it or not is irrelevant. It's what the story's telling you. And I always find value in stories. And so I love sci-fi. This is why I even talked about the arsenal of Kryptonian weapons and the parademon weaponry, and how similar their weapons, at least the mechanisms of their weapons, operate. I really enjoyed that. But in addition, I like to speak positive things, and I like to look at things which can help us. So this was more of a sci-fi thing for me. This definitely helps us. The people of the world can be us. We experience fear. It's representing us. And how our heroes, not in terms of superpowers, but in terms of our heroes, in terms of virtue, in terms of characteristics, in terms of our heroes of hope, or heroes of justice, or heroes of love, or heroes of science, or heroes that link us between space and time, the heroes of the past and present and future, or heroes that link us to technology. The internet allows us to speak with one another. That's why you guys are hearing my videos right now. And Cyborg is representative of this sort of relationship we have with technology. And so, our heroes, in terms of those who care about the environment, these are the people who inspire us. If you know people like this, if you know virtues like this, kindness, love, compassion, Wonder Woman, justice, fair play, Batman, hope, inspiration, Superman, that's what it's about. And that's what Warner Bros. Has brought to the table. And these virtues now have been examined and delved into over these last 3 movies, and Wonder Woman and even Suicide Squad to some degree have delved into these virtues and these characteristics. And that is what makes these movies meaningful. I was listening to Gal Gadot on Heart of Justice. And she was saying she can't identify with the superpowers of Wonder Woman. What she can identify with is her virtues, her loving nature, her kindness, her ability to be merciful, her inspirational ways of transforming people, making them do things they would not be able to do, encouraging them. She can identify with those things because those are traits and stuff that we as human beings can have. And so, in short, what I'm saying is that that's what makes a superhero movie, in my opinion, worth the while to watch. When I looked at the movie Gladiator, I remember not so much the violence of the movie, but just the fact that this man wanted to reunite with his families, set the record straight on not only his name, but on his troops, on his people, and also help Rome in his own way to get its footing back while he was on a mission of revenge, right? And to me, that's the thing that makes Gladiator beautiful, not the violence, not the, even, and what I loved about it too, just like Wonder Woman, they're not playing up on the violence in the music. The music is interesting in Gladiator. In Wonder Woman, the music's also very interesting in that Wonder Woman is not focused on knocking down Germans or destroying the German forces or even destroying the Allied forces. She does not care about any of them, to be honest with you, because she does not want war. She is interested in mankind coming together, loving one another, and working like how she heard her mother say mankind used to work once upon a time. And so she's trying to stop Ares. She later learns Ares is not the problem. It's that each of us have to make a choice. And there's light and darkness. And something that can be your greatest strength can be your greatest weakness. And I found that movie to be beautiful because of that. And Patty Jenkins did an excellent job of pointing the finger back at us and saying, no, when I look in the mirror, I need to look at me. And I am responsible for the good and evil in this world to some degree by how I react to it. Whether I say nothing when wrong is done, or whether I comment on something bad that happens to someone, or I pray for them, or I try to help them out, we can proactively make a difference. You know, a lot of times we hear a lot of bad news in the media, and we just shake our head and say, oh, that's so sad. But you know there's something you can always do when you hear bad news? You can either pray for people or send just good wishes their way. Someone gets in an accident, they're critically injured, doesn't mean they can't somehow by a miracle get well. It may seem that the smallest thing out there for you to do may not seem effective, but a simple thing like smiling at someone who is depressed and down. Oh, he's depressed and down, there's nothing I can do. There's always something you can do. And make it a habit of, if you hear bad news from someone or of someone, if you're not a Christian, don't know about praying, well, just think a positive thought to them or say something positive in the atmosphere to them. I hope they get well. Even that thought makes a big difference. Wishing people well is good. It doesn't seem as though it matters, but it does matter. It does matter. It's not about what, it doesn't matter how it speaks about you. What is important is that by just putting a good wish for someone out there, whether or not they do well or not, that shows that that's something someone else may react to and have an answer for that person. Let me give you an example of what I mean. So I'm out there, I'm selling drinks, and somebody's telling me, you know, something bad happened to them. I say, oh man, that's terrible. Hey man, I really wish for you that things will work out in your favor. And somebody was overhearing me speaking to that person, and they inquired what was the issue. And that person started telling their story, and the other person had the solution to it. So by me just saying that simple thing, it drew attention and magnetized the person who wasn't paying attention to anything, probably wasn't going to pay attention to the person's problem. But just by me saying something, because I'm out there selling and I seem to be so positive, that person fed off of my positive energy, asked the other person what the problem was through me, because it started off talking to me and then he started talking to the person. And because of that, that person had the solution to the other person's problem. And they were able to sort it out. And I'm just saying to you guys, being positive and just transmitting good to others, you never know how far that thing can go. You just never know. I use this medium here, and I try to be as careful as possible. I've been reckless sometimes, but I try to use this medium here to send positive thoughts and views to people. And I'll tell you why. We already have a ton of negative things out here in this world to focus on. We don't need more. And on top of that, change happens when you become proactive. If you just sit down there and let things happen as they're happening, well, they'll stay that way. But if you decide to get up and implement a change, and why is it people have to be all negative, or it has to be something negative for them to make a change? You can start making change in positive ways without any negative thing having to have happened. You don't have to wait for someone to get shot to be proactive about, hey man, we need to be safer and how we handle weaponry and stuff. You can take in front before in front takes you. We can be proactive in doing certain things, but it starts with us first. It starts with each individual. A community is made up of individuals. And we as individuals have to decide what each of us as individuals are willing to offer to that community in a positive way. Then the second step is to try to work with like-minded individuals to magnify that positive effect. You see? So, I love Star Wars for that. I love Justice League for that. And I love Black Panther for that. These are conscious films in which the filmmakers are making a conscious decision. Wonder Woman as well, by the way. 2017 was a good year for conscious movies. Blade Runner 2049, conscious movie. Kong Skull Island, environmental responsibility. Beautiful stuff. And my point being, the more we look at how I think Hollywood's trying to be responsible in how they direct, how they put out movies. I hope they get more and more responsible with time. But what I'm saying is, the messages that are portrayed in movies needs to be messages that can help us be better. And it's nothing wrong with putting out comedies and all those things. I mean, Thor Ragnarok has a couple of really positive things, that, a place is not defined by venue and location, but by the people in it. That's one of the really positive things about Thor Ragnarok. But what I'm saying to you guys is that we must understand and we must hold fast to the fact that each of us as individuals can make a difference in this world. And so that's all that, this is the reason why I'm focused on the DCEU and the DCEU movies, and Justice League especially is a very good DCEU movie. And those people who want to condemn it and they want to delve in the gutter and they want to be negative and they want to hate people and stuff, that wasn't the purpose of the movie. That wasn't the purpose of making this movie. Justice League was about coming together. It was about working together. That was the purpose that Zack Snyder had in mind, which is why he called it Unite and so on. So if it didn't go exactly according to how he would have loved to work the project, doesn't mean that you have to goat mount the whole project and hate on the whole project. Because the project in and of itself is saying this is a collaboration. This is a collaboration between people from what we would call opposite ends of the aisle, whether you like it or not. And that's why I will never condemn Justice League. Never. This present cut? Never. I don't care what people say about behind the scenes stuff. I like it and I appreciate it, and I actually will value it much more highly than Zack Snyder's director's cut. Yes, I know it's going to be a masterpiece and everything, but I just believe this movie has so much more character to it than that movie. It represents something that's beautiful. And I look at Warner Brothers hiring the guys who did Marvel's Spider-Man Homecoming. I didn't particularly love Spider-Man Homecoming. I thought it was a pretty good movie, but I didn't think it had inherent value like that. But I'm happy that Warner Brothers is actually taking these guys who directed Spider-Man Homecoming and actually having them direct a movie in Warner Brothers, whatever it is. It's going to be with Flash. I don't know if it'll still be Flashpoint. Maybe it will be. And my point being this. I still want to see the DCEU and Marvel work together. I still want to see that coming together. And I still believe in my heart that Justice League was that first step in that direction. And I hope that in the future that can happen. I understood what Warner Brothers was, not Warner Brothers, I'm sorry. I understood what DC was trying to do, get all their properties into one boat. I understood it. I truly believe that Zack Snyder's director's cut is going to be a beautiful one too. But I will collect this Justice League version that I saw in the theater. And I will love it because of what it represents. And no matter what anybody says, you can't change my mind on that. Because I think it's something special about people from opposite aisles. It's like a Democrat and a Republican coming together and actually drafting legislation. It didn't come out perfect. When you think of the what people like to call Obamacare or the Affordable Health Care Bill, it was a collaboration between the Republicans and the Democrats to get this bill on the floor, and it finally was passed. It wasn't perfect, but it represented something that did good to so many millions of people who got it. And yeah, it wasn't perfect, but it was a coming together. And when people come together, you don't always get the perfect result. You have to refine it over time. But it's worth it. To get people from opposite points of view who would usually be haggling and fighting with one another to come together at the table, that's a beautiful thing. And so, at the end of the day, I don't care what anybody says. I feel like this movie accomplished what it preached. It literally practiced what it was preaching. To come together. Didn't come out the way how we all expected it. But it damn has character. And over time, this particular movie, Justice League, the one that came out in the theater, is going to be valued even more highly. But time is its own. Time it has to take sometimes for people to release their feelings and release their hatred. Just like with Man of Steel. I remember how much vitriol came out with Man of Steel. Then I remember all the vitriol that came out for Batman v Superman. Zack Snyder's films. Yet another Zack Snyder film with controversy. I still love Zack. He's a good man. He's a little bit carried away sometimes, and I just hope that he realizes the bigger picture. I think his wife does, Deborah. But at the same time, I'm saying, I love the guy. And I think he made the right decision to have Whedon push through the film. Because if it was held back and it came out in 2019, it would have been too late. Vitriol and hatred tore this film down. Hate. Vitriol and hatred had the elections put Donald Trump in power. But in time, people will realize that vitriol and hatred is not the answer. It's about building, not destroying. If you don't agree with something in the process, you dialogue. And if you have to take a stand and then speak out, you do so. But vitriol and hatred is not the way to go. I applaud some of the people who are pushing for the Snyder Cut and not bashing the current Justice League. I respect you guys. I respect the guys who are breaking down Justice League and still showing the inherent values in it, even though they know that there's probably a better film that Zack has on the horizon. Because that's the way we must conduct ourselves. On that note,